Stop. If you build in FlutterFlow, this matters. Dreamflow just dropped support for GitHub, meaning you can finally get your FlutterFlow projects into Dreamflow. FlutterFlow hasn't announced it. The community isn't talking about it, but it's live. So today's mission, use Dreamflow's rapid development to rescue a Christmas cocktail app stuck in development hell and get it onto the App Store before the turkey's even been carved. It's a special Christmas edition of Let's Build.
So let's have a look at this Christmas cocktail app. While it features a functional onboarding screen, it's quite polished and worth keeping. The user experience deteriorates pretty rapidly after that. We encounter this image carousel that feels a bit outdated, displaying the full cocktail list and previous Christmas cocktail winners. When you tap into a specific cocktail, there's fairly inconsistent formatting, and the layout is otherwise fairly dated. Although the save functionality works, the overall layout lacks design cohesion and it makes the UI feel fairly disjointed. So to kick off this, rejuvenation process, we need to prepare the legacy project inside of FlutterFlow editor. Our first step is removing any depreciated components or unused pages to clean up the project structure. Next, verify your metadata configuration, ensuring app details, assets, and navigation bars are all correctly defined. Crucially, confirm that your Firebase functions or Superbase functions are deployed, checking that Firebase security rules like these are synced properly with the latest version. These are all vital things to ensure that the backend infrastructure is fully operational. Now navigate to the settings menu, select the GitHub tab, and prepare to push the source code to a remote repository. If you're new to pushing your FlutterFlow project to GitHub, there's some excellent documentation right at the top of this screen. Enter a clear git commit message. My git message of initial commit here is probably not terribly detailed, but this captures a snapshot of your project's state, version control. Once initiated, the system packages your Dart code and assets, and depending on the complexity and size of your build, this sync will complete by successfully pushing all your changes to your connected GitHub repository. Now, that means that the real fun can begin. We can go into Dreamflow and click on this new Clone Codebase button. Now note that GitHub integration requires a Pro plan, which costs $90 a month. This is a step up from the standard Pro plan. And similarly, FlutterFlow also restricts GitHub access to a paid plan. So essentially, you will be subscribing to both FlutterFlow and Dreamflow simultaneously. Once we've secured the appropriate Dreamflow plan, it's time to clone the code base. This involves 3 key steps: naming your project, copying your repository link from GitHub, and generating a token within GitHub's developer settings. Click Generate New Token, authenticate your account, and assign a name to the token. Set an expiration date and scope access specifically to the target repository, then click Generate. Copy the token and place it into the clone repository field. If you encounter any commission errors, you might want to step back to a classic token configuration, where you just generate a new classic token, verify it has repo access, as well as write packages and delete packages permissions. If errors persist, verify your GitHub repo points to the FlutterFlow branch, as this is where the platform generates your code. Alternatively, merge the FlutterFlow branch into main or set FlutterFlow as the default branch. Remember, Dreamflow only clones your default branch.
But once correctly targeted, click clone, and that will initialize the migration. A lot happens in the background here. Beyond initializing the workspace, Dreamflow ingests the entire code base, parsing the widget structure to understand component editability. And keep in mind that this platform is still in its early development stages. So you may, like me, encounter some dependency errors and unusual build errors during import. I certainly experienced this, and that often brought the process to a halt when importing FlutterFlow projects in particular. Next, I'm going to feed in the changes that I've just transcribed really briefly in a text file into the agent. I'm also going to upload a couple of stitch mockups demonstrating the carousel and the cocktail detail layouts. These mockups also include the updated navigation bar, which is now in a pill shape. So this kicks the agent into gear. The whole process takes a moment, so I'll fast forward, but I'll let you know how long the generation takes. So here's the first iteration of the updated nav bar. Based on the stitch mockups, the design is a floating pill shape featuring a central cocktail logo encased in a white outlined circle. So let's test it out. The middle button functions correctly, but the carousel has shifted to horizontal for some reason. The hero animations are missing, though the details screen layout has improved slightly. Scrolling is a bit glitchy, and while the nav bar is decent, the suggest a cocktail functionality isn't really present. Dreamflow is telling us that there is no backend connection. Even though Firebase is linked to the FlutterFlow project, Dreamflow doesn't recognize it. Cloning the repo doesn't bridge the backend. Neither Firebase nor Supabase transfer over. There's a couple of other frustrating quirks, most notably FlutterFlow, metadata, things like project name, app icons, and splash screens are not carried over during ingestion here, which is a bit of a pain point, no less exacerbated by the fact that Dreamflow is particularly bad at setting up things like app icons through the agent. These missing fundamentals hamper the current process, I've got to say. But I wanted to give it another go. So I've imported my raw notes.
Okay, so I literally just dumped my scribbles into Google AI Studio, just the image, and said, this PDF is notes of some changes that need to be made to a Flutter app. Create me a brief for an AI app builder. And on first go, I got a pretty decent brief. Okay, so I wanted to see how Dreamflow performed given a bit of a better brief. That was a very brief prompt that I gave it first up. So now that I have this expanded prompt from Google AI Studio, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Clone the code base again, and go through the kind of annoying process of getting a brand new access token because our access token isn't saved in Dreamflow. There's also another quirk with Dreamflow that you can only have you can only have it connected to one Dreamflow project at a time, which makes sense. But there's no real easy unlinking and linking process. You just get an error and you have to go and find your repo and click an unlink button and go through the whole process again. You also can't connect that repository later to your project. You can only connect blank repos to your Dreamflow project, certainly right now. So that means this Dreamflow project will be forever disconnected from your source control, and there's no way to actually reconnect the two. There, hopefully, is some special source under the hood here that we're paying for, right? Otherwise, you just go directly to Claude Code or Gemini or Codeex. So in this instance, and with this project, given that FlutterFlow and Dreamflow are made by the same people, you would hope and expect that there is some knowledge that the agent has around what a FlutterFlow project is structured like. And if you've ever used the exported code out of FlutterFlow, you'll know that FlutterFlow has a very unique FlutterFlow way of structuring the code into folders and the model that it uses. There's no point debating whether that's right or wrong. It's just the way that FlutterFlow creates the code. And it may or may not be different to the way that you would ordinarily structure a Flutter project should you start from scratch. And certainly it's different to the way that Dreamflow structures a Flutter project. So, all right, so we've got our clone to project into Dreamflow. We've got our project loaded. It's taken solid 13 minutes, but we're finally able to put in our expanded prompt in our two mockup images from Stitch. Here we can see the first look at our updated navbar. It's not bad, actually, though we have lost our cocktail icon in our middle button, and the button's not centered in the pill shape, though it does have a white outline, which we wanted. When we click into our cocktail, not a ton has changed. And clicking on the main navbar doesn't seem to work at all. We look to have lost some functionality, and I'm not sure we've gained a ton. So if we look back to our mockups, we've got a carousel that's meant to have a big date at the top, image in the background. 3/4 of the way down, it's meant to have the title of the cocktail. Underneath that, it's meant to have two little tags. And below that, it's meant to have a view recipe button. And we're meant to actually see the cards underneath from at the top of the card, right? Cascading back. We can see a submissions.dart, but in the Dreamflow interface, of course, there's no way to actually get to
a Dart file in preview mode unless you actually navigate to it, which is probably the most frustrating thing about editing anything in preview mode in Dreamflow. If you don't want to use the agent in Dreamflow, your options are to manually code or try and use preview mode with the properties panel, which had some recent improvements being made to it, but it's still a frustrating experience, especially for things like this carousel, which inside of FlutterFlow is a dream to edit, but it's an exercise in frustration in Dreamflow, unfortunately. Alternative universe style. If I just had taken my code out of FlutterFlow and given it to a LLM coding agent, in this instance, I've chosen Codeex, simply because Codeex 5.2 came out a couple of days ago. So I pulled my code into Visual Studio Code. I'm creating a new branch called Codeex based off my FlutterFlow branch. The goal here is to see what the output looks like had I not used Dreamflow. So I'm firing up Codeex here in the terminal, and we'll make sure we're on the GPT 5.2 Codeex Extra High model. Okay, what we're going to start with here is using our slash commands, and we're going to use slash init. And this creates that all-important agents.markdown file, which is fast becoming, I guess you could say, the standard way of giving LLM coding agents a top-down view of your code base. It's been widely adopted. We're going to have a look at our agents markdown file now and just check that we agree with everything and that's correct, given this is an important document and it really will guide the agent in any of its future amends. So important that it is accurate. Now let's brief it with our updated extended prompt from Gemini OpenAI Studio, which for whatever reason seemed to drag in differently. Not going to lie, this takes a really long time. Codex takes a good solid, have to say, about an hour, which in a number of ways is good. I mean, you want it to be thorough, right? I'm going to fast forward the process so that you don't have to sit through it. But yeah, you want it to be thorough and do a good job, but it's not a quick process. All right, so how did Codex do? We're going to do a Flutter run and open it in our simulator. So I guess not an amazing start, you could say. All right, so let's feed all of our initial build errors back through into Codex. Now it's done a review of its work. Well, now it's done a review of the entire code base, including its work.
A few moments later.
So how did Codex go with the UI? Look, visually, you can't deny it. This result is significantly closer to our initial design mockups. The vertical carousel is rendering correctly, with the date element prominent at the top, followed by the cocktail title positioned lower down and our tag labels aligned quickly. Running the app reveals a permissions error. It's looking like it's around our submissions collection, indicating that our Firebase security rules might need some work. Being a new collection, that's not entirely surprising. We'll address these backend rules later. Right now, I'm focused on getting the UI implementation looking right.
2,000 years later.
I wish I could say this story ends with a Christmas miracle. Like one of those cheesy Netflix rom-coms, but it doesn't. After failing to get a usable output from Dreamflow's AI agent and struggling with manual fixes on the platform, I got creative. I used a combination of OpenAI's Codeex and Anthropic's Claude Code to massage the exported FlutterFlow code into a deployable app. That hybrid approach eventually worked. I re-imported the improved code back into Dreamflow and used Dreamflow's deployment tools to publish the app. Google's Play Store approved it in one go, but Apple's App Store rejected it 4 times. Yep, 4. That grueling saga is a tale for another day, but needless to say, there was no sudden miracle ending here, just persistence and grit and grind. So what's the real message I want to leave you with? It's not that exporting from FlutterFlow is a trap, quite the opposite. The fact that you can walk away with real code puts you in control. That path might be rough, but at least it's yours. And it's not that Dreamflow is useless either. It's just early. The promise is there, but for now, it's more hype than handoff. And I'm not here to preach full manual code editing either. That route has its own trade-offs. Here's the real message. I'm a developer who came up in the low-code era, and I'm not alone. There are 1.6 million of us building with FlutterFlow alone, navigating the blurry line between visual development and code-native tools. Lately, it feels like the industry's moved on, chasing vibe coding and AI agents that hallucinate entire apps. But that doesn't mean what we've built doesn't matter. Low-code developers have a voice, one that's grown through community forums, developer conferences, and shipping real apps. And now's the time to use it. Because when the AI bubble bursts, your hard-fought low-code experience may yet be what's left in the ashes. I, for one, am going to keep pushing forward, and I hope you will too. This story didn't have a fairy tale ending, but it's far from over. If you've enjoyed the content from my channel this year, please hit subscribe. Our journey continues, and I'll see you in 2026. Happy building.